Pray with me. Holy and gracious God, we seek your Spirit now to speak to us and move through us. Help us all to hear your voice, that even the preacher might hear your message for us this day. We pray in your Son's name. Amen. At first glance this morning, the gospel lesson appears to be just an ordinary healing story of Jesus. Jesus and the disciples meet 10 lepers on the road to Jerusalem and the cross, incidentally. And lepers do just what they're supposed to do. They stand far off from Jesus, declare themselves unclean, and ask for a healing. And Jesus, as he is wont to do, heals them. They run off to the priests to affirm their healing and to re-enter their community, just like so many other healings before. It's an ordinary story, nothing special, except for the one who comes back. The leper that makes this story something else, something more than just another ordinary healing story. We often read this story as one about Thanksgiving and gratitude. It's even in the lectionary text for Thanksgiving Day. And that's not a bad read. It's an important read even. I just gave it to the kids down here on the front steps. But I think there's something else going on here in addition to it being about gratitude. Something well worth noticing. And that something is the formation of community. Lepers in Jesus' day were excluded from community. They were considered unclean and highly, highly contagious. They had no place in society. They were expected to stay on the outskirts of any city they lived in. They were disowned by their own families and required to announce their condition to any who came near to them, so that they might not, by their very presence, make somebody else unclean. They were isolated and excluded. So it's no wonder that the 10 in our story seek Jesus and his help. They just want to belong. They just want to be someplace, to be welcomed, to be a part of a community. And so Jesus gives them that sense of belonging. Go and show yourselves to the priest, he says. Show them that you are healed, because this was the step required of those who had leprosy. They had to go and have the priest examine them and see there were no more sores on their skin. And the 10 go and do just that. They go to the priest, and as they go, even the second they leave, they're cured. Their reintegration is almost complete. So why does one turn back? Why does one not do what Jesus asked him to do? There's a risk there. Not so much in Jesus' stories, but certainly in other examples in the Bible of prophetic healings. If you don't do what the prophet tells you to do, the curing doesn't stick. To go back to Jesus and not go to the priests is violating what Jesus told him to do. He took a big risk. Why? Certainly in part due to his gratitude. Well, I think there's more going on here. We cannot nor should we dismiss quickly the simple relief and joy of being healed. After who knows long of suffering and exclusion, the leper who comes back has a new lease on life, has a new lease on being able to be a part of community. He comes back in part out of gratitude and thanksgiving. He comes back to thank Jesus for the gift of his new life. As I said, in so doing, he disobeys direct orders. Jesus says, go to the priest, and he doesn't do that. Presumably the other 9 do. We should probably not condemn them for that. We shouldn't question why they too don't come back to thank the one who healed them. We sometimes paint them in that way. It's ungrateful, but that's not very fair. They're just doing as they were told. They're just following the instructions that Jesus gave them. And we don't know what happened afterwards. If they tried to find Jesus later after they'd been to the priest. If they didn't, but gave praise to God. Or if they forgot and actually were ungrateful. We just don't know because they're not the point of the story. The point of the story is the one that does come back, the 10th leper. So we should ask instead is why he does. And we can only speculate, but the text doesn't really tell us, but it's my belief. He comes back because he realizes that Jesus has given him more than just a new lease on life. Jesus has given him a new lease on community, a lease on a new community. The community of Christ. And here is where the reality of that leper being a Samaritan becomes important. Because as much as Jesus invited him to rejoin society by going to the priests, he wasn't really being invited for that. Because his place in society as a Samaritan was already that of a second-class citizen. At least in the Jewish portions of Palestine. He could have gone to the priests. He was on his way. And the priest would have said, "Yep, you're clean. Now get out." Because Samaritans weren't welcome in the temple. They weren't welcome in society. He wouldn't have been welcome even as a clean person. Instead, he chooses to come to Jesus, to the one who cured him. And in so doing, he is made whole. That's the way the King James Version says it. Now, you might wonder sometimes why I don't preach in the King James Version. And there are a wide variety of reasons. The number one reason being that it was written 400 years ago by Englishmen, and no one in this room speaks like an Englishman from 400 years ago. But in this one instance, and I'm sure there are others too, the King James Version gets something that our newer translations miss, something important and vital. At the end of the story, in the King James Version, Jesus says to the leper, "Rise, for your faith has made you whole." Not your faith has healed you, your faith has made you whole. The 10th leper, the one who returns, the one who was an outcast in double ways, he is made whole. He isn't just healed, all 10 get healed. But he is made whole. I think this wholeness is becoming a part, for the first time in his life, of a community. The wholeness is the realization that in staying with Jesus and his followers, he can be accepted as someone real, someone who is a part of a family, a part of a community. The wholeness is being welcomed and embraced and loved for who he is. We, of course, have no idea if he stays with Jesus, or if he takes this gift of being seen and healed and made whole and goes about his life. But I like to think that he does stay. That he joins this new community, the community of Christ, and follows Jesus where he goes. And where Jesus goes in this story is the cross, is Jerusalem. But the former leper, wouldn't have been afraid of the shame of the cross, though perhaps the Roman soldiers might have given him some pause. He wouldn't have been ashamed of what was to come, because he already knew what it was to be on the margins. He already knew what it was to be on the outside of his society. But in Jesus, and in the community that Jesus was forming, the 10th leper, the Samaritan, found something else. In Jesus, he began to know what it was like to belong, to be accepted, to be embraced. In the community of Jesus, he was made whole. So is our response. How do we respond to this story? Well, I think we work hard to make it a reality in our lives today. The community of faith, the community of Christ, is meant to be a place where others are made whole, where those who feel excluded can come and be welcomed, where those on the margins of society can come and know that they belong, where those who we might call the least of these can come and be embraced and welcomed and a part of the community, where those who need the love and grace of God and the fellowship of a family can come and be made whole. That's our call as a church, and not just as a congregation, but as the wider church. That's our call, that's our invitation. It's who we're called to be. We are called to be a place where all the lepers of our society, I thought about making a list, but honestly, you know who they are. All the ones who we exclude, who we think less than, or at least our society does. We are meant to be a place where they can come, where they can feel welcomed, where they can truly be welcomed. That's our call as a community of faith, as the church. To be a place where those who need it can experience the whole-making power of Jesus Christ, the power of being a part of a community. And the good news is, as we do that, we too get to experience that power. We too get to experience community as it's meant to be. I said at the beginning, this isn't really a normal healing story. And that's because the one who is healed, the one who is made whole, isn't actually the leper. It's us. As we see his story, as we keep expanding our family, our welcome, our love to include those who have been excluded, as we keep working to become the welcoming and inviting community of faith, both here and around the world, that Jesus calls us to be, then we are made whole. Then we are healed. Then we experience the good news of the presence and power of Jesus Christ. Because in those moments, we become the new community that Jesus sought to form, the community of Christ. Amen. Let us sing our song.